At the far western edge of Europe, where the cliffs suddenly stop before the Atlantic Ocean, there lies a small country that has spent most of its history gazing out to sea. That country is Portugal, a nation that looks so peaceful you might think nothing here could ever be shocking. But don't let the red-tiled roofs, the old trams, or the slow pace of life fool you. Because Portugal once did something very few countries dared to try. When the heroin crisis pushed thousands of families into despair, they didn't keep stuffing addicts into prisons. In 2001, the country decriminalized the use and possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use, shifting its focus from punishment to treatment. Drugs did not become legal, but addicts began to be seen as patients who needed help rather than simply criminals. And that was only the first surprise. Off the coast of Nazar, the Atlantic can build water walls taller than an 8-story building. One surfer once conquered a wave over 26 meters high, there setting a Guinness World Record that stunned the world. In the south, the Algarve enjoys around 300 sunny days a year. In the cork oak forests, workers strip the bark by hand to make wine corks without ever needing to cut the trees down. Portugal alone produces about half of the world's cork, but what travelers often remember longest isn't found in the numbers. It's the stone-paved streets under golden sunlight. It's the sound of FADO so sorrowful it can silence an entire room. It's the quiet, striking beauty of Portuguese women. And it's the feeling that life here moves one beat slower than the rest of Europe. Yet, behind that postcard image lies a paradox few visitors ever see. Portugal may still seem relatively affordable to many foreigners, but for the locals themselves, low wages and rapidly rising housing prices are turning their homeland into an increasingly difficult place to live. The world is flocking to Portugal in search of a better life, while many young Portuguese people are leaving in search of their own future. So what is life really like in this country? How have those controversial laws reshaped its society? Is Portugal truly Europe's haven for slow living, or just a beautiful dream reserved for people with money from somewhere else? Let's step into a very different Portugal one, where the deeper you go, the more you realize that beauty is only the first layer of the story. Part 1. A cheap paradise, but not for the locals. Before talking about unusual laws or the beauty of the Portuguese people, let's start with what has drawn so many foreigners here in the first place: the cost of living. In the morning, in some small town, you can stand at the counter, order a strong espresso with a still warm pastry, and slowly watch the streets wake up. Lunch at a family-run restaurant is usually simple grilled fish potatoes, bread, and a glass of local wine. If you move away from Lisbon, Porto, or the busy resort areas, rent and living costs can still be far gentler than in most big cities in France, Germany, or the UK. That's the Portugal tourists see. Plenty of sunshine, great food, and a life that seems to need surprisingly little money to enjoy. But talk to a local for even a few minutes, and that picture quickly changes. Since the start of 2026, Portugal's minimum wage has risen from 870 to 920 euros a month. Even with that increase, many workers' incomes still struggle to keep pace with rising housing costs, especially in Lisbon. In recent years, the sunshine, safety, and slower pace of life have drawn retirees, investors, and remote workers from all over the world. They arrive earning salaries from London, Paris, or New York, but spending them in Portugal. And as more and more people compete for an apartment overlooking those red-tiled roofs, rents have started climbing beyond the reach of many locals. A waiter might work right in the heart of Lisbon, but have to live dozens of kilometers away. A young person might love the city where they were born, yet not be able to afford a room there. This is the biggest paradox of modern Portugal. A place foreigners call a cheap paradise is becoming too expensive for the very people who cook the food, run the cafes, and keep the city running every day. So if we only ask, is Portugal cheap, we'll never get the full answer. The real question is cheap for whom? And behind these numbers about income lies a society where women hold a far stronger role than the quiet, modest image visitors often see. Because Portuguese women aren't just captivating, they're also among the most hardworking and independent in Europe. Part 2. Beauty that needs no showing off. Portuguese women rarely draw attention through flashiness. Their appeal comes from Mediterranean features, a natural demeanor, and a confidence that doesn't need to be put on display. On a first meeting, they may seem a little reserved. A brief greeting, a soft smile, sometimes just a bit of small talk over a bica, the small but very strong Portuguese espresso. Warmth here takes time to reveal itself, but once that distance dissolves, you might quickly find yourself invited to the table and asked about your life like an old friend. Behind that reserve are women who are independent and hardworking. They're present in nearly every field from education and healthcare to business and politics, while still playing a central role in family life. For them, beauty isn't the opposite of strength, the two exist side by side. The Portuguese also aren't fond of showy flattery. Sincerity, courtesy, and respect for personal space usually matter more than an empty compliment. To understand them, you have to slow down much the way the country itself operates. But Portugal's progressiveness isn't shown only through the role of women. It's also found in a decision that once stunned the entire world. Instead of jailing addicts, the country chose to send them to see a doctor. And nearly 25 years ago, that decision opened the door to one of the boldest social experiments in Europe. Part 3. When addicts were saved instead of jailed. By the late 20th century, Portugal was facing a severe heroin crisis. Prisons grew more crowded, HIV spread widely among people who injected drugs, and the death toll kept climbing. The old approach of punishment clearly wasn't solving the problem. In 2001, the country made a decision that shocked the world. It decriminalized the use and possession of small amounts of drugs for personal use, generally defined as roughly a 10-day supply. That didn't mean drugs became legal. Trafficking, production, and possession of large quantities remained crimes. But someone caught with a small amount would no longer automatically be sent to prison. Instead, they might be required to appear before a panel made up of medical professionals, social workers, and legal experts. There, each case was assessed to determine a warning, an administrative measure, or a referral toward treatment. Portugal changed the question it was asking. Instead of simply asking, "What law did this person break?" it began asking, "What happened to this person, and how can we help them find a way out?" In the years following the reform, drug-related deaths and HIV infections linked to injection use dropped sharply compared with the height of the crisis. The policy didn't eliminate drugs entirely, nor did it solve every problem. But it showed that compassion can sometimes achieve more than punishment. And this wasn't the only time Portugal dared to move ahead of many other nations. On issues of human rights, safety, and clean energy, this small country has made choices that caught the attention of all of Europe. Part 4. A small nation that keeps getting ahead of its time. Portugal's progressiveness didn't stop with drug policy. In 2010, the country legalized same-sex marriage, becoming one of the earlier European nations to recognize equal marriage rights. Portugal also regularly ranks among the most peaceful countries in the world. Violent crime stays low. Political life is relatively stable, and a clear sense of safety runs through everyday routines. In many areas, people are still comfortable walking around or chatting outside late at night. But the country's ambitions aren't limited to social policy. Thanks to strong Atlantic winds, large rivers, and abundant sunshine, Portugal has rapidly developed wind hydro and solar power. At certain stretches, the amount of renewable electricity produced has even exceeded the entire country's consumption. Portugal isn't a perfect society. It still grapples with inequality, the cost of living, and many of the challenges facing modern Europe. Even so, it has shown time and again that a small country doesn't necessarily have to wait for larger ones to act first. And to see this blend of tradition and modernity most clearly, we have to go to Lisbon, a city where century-old trams still wind through streets that are changing by the day. Part 5. Lisbon. A city painted in light. Lisbon doesn't sit directly on the ocean, but stretches along the estuary of the Tagus River right before its waters merge with the Atlantic. That position gives the city a golden light reflecting off red-tiled roofs and tile-covered facades. Those blue and white tiles are called azulejo. They appear on churches, train stations, and old buildings, turning all of Lisbon into an open-air gallery. The most delightful way to explore the city is to hop on tram number 28. Its yellow cars weave through narrow streets, tilting up slopes that modern buses can barely manage. The route carries visitors through several historic neighborhoods, but if you want to feel a quieter Lisbon, go early in the morning before the trams fill up with people. From a miradouro up on a hill, the city unfolds with iron balconies, colorful house walls, and the Tagus glimmering in the distance. Down in the streets, locals stand at counters drinking coffee, chat for a few minutes, then carry on with their day. Evenings arrive later, meals stretch longer, and no one seems to be in much of a hurry. But the true soul of Lisbon lies in the winding alleys of Alfama. This is the old quarter where laundry still hangs from balconies, neighbors chat through windows, and the sound of FADO sometimes drifts out from a small tavern. Lisbon captivates because it feels as though the past never really left. It simply stepped aside, making room for modern life to pass through. Yet if Lisbon is bright and open, Porto in the north carries a completely different character, cooler, more subdued, and not far from where the Atlantic builds waves of almost unbelievable size. Part 6. Subdued Porto and a 26-meter wall of water. If Lisbon is made of light, Porto seems built from stone, mist, and time. The city sits on slopes leading down to the Douro River, with houses stacked in tiers and iron bridges spanning its two banks. Porto is older, more subdued, and a little rougher around the edges than the capital, but it's precisely that imperfection that makes it so compelling. Across the river lie the wine cellars of Vila Nova de Gaia, where port wine ages for years at a time. Grapes grown on the terraced slopes of the Douro Valley travel downriver to get here. Some bottles wait decades before reaching their intended flavor, a patience that mirrors Portugal's own pace of life. But not far from Porto, the Atlantic reveals its fiercest face. At Praia do Norte in Nazar, giant waves can rise as tall as a building. The Guinness World Record confirmed here belongs to Sebastian Steitner, who surfed a wave measuring 26.21 meters in 2020. The cause lies beneath the surface. An underwater canyon off Nazar channels and amplifies the energy of Atlantic swells as they approach shore, producing walls of water of extraordinary size. Facing them takes more than courage. From a surfer, it requires a rescue team, jet skis, and almost total preparation. In Portugal, the ocean has brought wine trade and exploration, while also reminding people just how small they truly are. Leaving that fierce coastline behind, our journey continues to another side of Portugal, a place where within one small country you can find sun-scorched cliffs, volcanic green forests and lakes resting inside ancient volcanic craters. Part 7. One small country. Many worlds. At Cabo da Roca, tall cliffs rise sharply against the Atlantic. This is the westernmost point of mainland Portugal, and also a place where you truly feel Europe coming to an end. Though only about 92,000 square kilometers in size, Portugal's landscape shifts dramatically from north to south. The north is green, cooler, and rainier. The Alentejo stretches out in dry, golden fields, while the Algarve is known for its mild climate, coastal cliffs, and roughly 300 sunny days a year. But Portugal doesn't stop at the Iberian Peninsula. Out in the Atlantic lie Madeira and the Azores, two volcanic archipelagos, each with an entirely different kind of beauty. Madeira is lush, steep, and warm nearly all year round. Roads wind along mountainsides, with the deep ocean stretching below. It's also the homeland of Cristiano Ronaldo, the most famous Portuguese figure of the modern era. Further west lies the Azores, made up of 9 islands scattered across the Atlantic. Traces of volcanic activity are everywhere here. Crater lakes, hot mineral springs, and valleys blanketed in green. You could soak in warm waters in the morning, then head out to sea to watch whales by afternoon. Portugal may be small on the map, but each region feels like a world of its own. Yet all that sunshine and scenery is also drawing more and more people here. And as Portugal becomes the world's dream destination, the lives of its own people are starting to feel a pressure like never before. Part 8. The dark side behind 300 sunny days. Portugal is loved by the whole world right now, but sometimes that very love comes with a steep price. From 2019 to 2024, tourist overnight stays rose by about 15%. Hotels, restaurants, and services have grown, bringing jobs and significant revenue to the country. But in Lisbon, more and more apartments are being converted into short-term rentals. By the end of 2024, the number of listings on Airbnb amounted to roughly 7.6% of all housing in the metropolitan area. For a tourist, that's one more room overlooking the old town. For a local, it can mean one more home disappearing from the long-term rental market. Young people bear the heaviest burden. Housing prices in Portugal have climbed rapidly since 2013, while wages haven't kept pace. Many are staying with their parents longer, moving further from city centers, or seeking work in France, Germany, and other countries offering higher pay. The effects are visible in the country's interior. Young people leave schools run short of students' shops, close down, and many villages are left with only elderly residents. The houses are still standing, but the lights no longer come on behind their windows. This is Portugal's saddest paradox. The world comes here to live out its dream, while a share of its own people must leave home to build their future. Even so, the Portuguese haven't lost their capacity to enjoy life. When festival season arrives, those quiet streets can transform into a sea of people music and even a few strange customs that no tourist is ever warned about beforehand. Part 9. When the whole city becomes a festival. The Portuguese can be reserved in everyday life, but once festival season begins, that restraint nearly disappears. In June, Lisbon's old neighborhoods are draped in colorful flags for the Santo Antonio festival. Tables and chairs spill out onto the sidewalks, music drifts down from balconies, and sardines are grilled right in the street. Smoke from the charcoal mixes with laughter, creating a scent locals see as the true sign that summer has arrived. In Porto, the night of São João is even livelier. People pour into the streets to eat, dance, and gently tap strangers on the head, with squeaky plastic hammers. People once used leek stalks for this. Today, the plastic hammer has become the festival's signature. By midnight, fireworks light up the Douro River, and the celebration can carry on until sunrise. In the village of Potence, the Carretos festival takes on a wilder character. Men dressed in fringed red costumes wearing masks and cowbells run through the village teasing the crowds. This ancient winter tradition is now recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage. Even the colorful rooster figurines found in souvenir shops carry their own story. According to the legend of Barcelos, a pilgrim wrongly condemned was proven innocent when a roasted rooster on the judge's table suddenly crowed. Since then, the Galo de Barcelos has become a symbol of faith, justice, and good fortune. These festivals reveal a completely different side of Portugal, loud, playful, and full of life. But to understand why family remains at the center of this society, we need to look at the most important place in every home, the dining table. Part 10. Flavors brought home from the ocean. Portuguese cuisine doesn't try to impress through elaborate presentation. It's built from familiar ingredients: fish bread, olive oil, potatoes, and wine. The dish most deeply tied to this country is bacalhau, salted dried codfish. Interestingly, cod isn't caught in any great quantity in Portuguese waters. It was once brought home by sailors from the North Atlantic and became an inseparable part of the local kitchen. People often joke that they have enough bacalhau recipes for every day of the year. Summer, meanwhile, belongs to grilled sardines. The fish are laid straight over hot coals and eaten with bread or potatoes. The dish is so simple, there's almost nowhere to hide. One bite tells you whether the fish was truly fresh. And after the meal comes pastel de nata, the small egg custard tart with a crisp shell and a scorched top. In Belém, the tarts are still made, following a tradition that traces back to the monastrias, best eaten warm with a dusting of cinnamon on top. But for the Portuguese, the food itself sometimes matters less than the time spent around it. A weekend lunch can stretch on for hours. Adults talk, children run around the table, and dishes keep getting passed from one person to the next. The dining table isn't just a place to fill the stomach. It's where families stay connected, work through disagreements, and pass memories down through generations. On those same tables, there's often a bottle of wine sealed with a material Portugal produces more of than any other country in the world, a kind of brown gold that can be harvested for hundreds of years without ever cutting down a single tree. Part 11. Brown gold that never needs a tree. Cut down on Portugal's dry, golden fields grows a tree with a remarkable ability. It can have its bark stripped away and still keep living. That tree is the cork oak. Once a tree reaches maturity, workers use a specialized axe to peel off the outer bark entirely by hand. The work demands great precision, since a single cut that goes too deep can injure the trunk. After the harvest, the tree is left alone for 9 years to regrow its bark. No tree is ever cut down. A cork oak can live around 200 years and be harvested many times over its lifetime. Portugal now produces about half of the world's cork. The material isn't only used for wine stoppers, it also appears in flooring, footwear, insulation, and many modern design products. Cork forests, known as montado, also provide habitat for a wide range of plant and animal species. So, every time a bottle of wine is opened, that small stopper may carry with it the story of an ecosystem that has endured across generations. This way of harvesting reflects something essential about the Portuguese character: patience, respect for time, and taking no more than nature can replenish. But cork is only a small mark this country has left on the world. Centuries ago, from those very same shores, Portuguese fleets set sail and built an empire spanning multiple continents. At one point, together with Spain, they drew a line across the map and declared the still unknown world divided in two. Part 12. The small empire that once split the world in two. In the 15th century, Portugal was a small kingdom perched at the edge of Europe. Spain blocked its path to the east, while to the west lay nothing but the vast Atlantic. So it took the only road left, open the sea. Portuguese sailors traced their way down the African coast, searching for gold spices and a sea route to the east. In 1498, Vasco da Gama reached India by sea, opening a trade route that shifted the balance of power across the world. 4 years earlier, Portugal and Spain had signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. With a single line drawn across the map, the two kingdoms declared how they would divide the lands beyond Europe that they might conquer. That decision explains why Brazil speaks Portuguese today, while most of South America speaks Spanish. From Brazil to Angola, Mozambique, Goa, East Timor, and Macau, Portugal built a colonial network spanning multiple continents. But behind these celebrated voyages of exploration lay violence, coercion, and the empire's significant role in the transatlantic slave trade. That's a part of the history that can't be left out if this story is to be told honestly. The empire gradually unraveled, only formally coming to a close when Macau was handed over to China in 1999. Its deepest lasting mark is language. Today, Portuguese is spoken by hundreds of millions of people across nations on 4 continents. Lisbon itself still carries the memory of that rise and loss. In 1755, a massive earthquake followed by a tsunami and fires destroyed much of the city. Lisbon was later rebuilt with straight boulevards and wide squares, a layout still visible today. Portugal once sailed out into the world in search of riches. Now the world comes to Portugal to discover what remains of that legacy. But if you only had one trip to make, where should you begin, and when is the best time to see this country at its most authentic? Part 13. A journey to the edge of Europe. If this is your first time in Portugal, Lisbon is the most sensible place to start. Walk through Alfama early in the morning, take in the city from a Miradouro, then head on to Belém, where the Belém Tower and Jerónimos Monastery still hold the imprint of the Age of Discovery. Not far from the capital lies Sintra, a mist-covered hill town with gardens and palaces that seem to have stepped out of a fairy tale. The most striking of them is Peña Palace, glowing red and yellow atop the mountain. Heading north, Porto offers a slower pace. From here you can follow the Douro River up into vineyard-covered hills or visit Nazar during big wave season to watch the Atlantic show off its full power firsthand. If you're after warm sun and coastal cliffs, head down to the Algarve. For something wilder, Madeira and the Azores are 2 volcanic worlds set out in the ocean. And for pilgrims, Fatima remains one of the most important Catholic sites in Europe. Spring and early autumn tend to bring pleasant weather, while June is an ideal time to join the street festivals. Summer is busier and pricier, especially in Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve. Though Portugal was once known as a budget destination, today's travelers should still book ahead and venture beyond the well-worn routes into smaller towns. But there's one experience you won't find on a beach or inside a palace. When night falls in Lisbon, step into a small tavern in Alfama, put your phone away, and stay quiet. Because when the 12-string guitar begins to play, you'll hear music that holds the entire soul of Portugal within it. Part 14. FADO. A sadness only the Portuguese truly understand. If Spain has the fiery intensity of flamenco, Portugal has FADO, slow, deep, and carrying a sense of loss that's hard to put into words. A traditional FADO performance rarely needs a grand stage, just a singer standing in a small tavern accompanied by a classical guitar and the teardrop-shaped Portuguese guitarra with its 12 strings. Once the voice rises, the room seems to come to a halt. Waiters stop mid-step. Diners set down their forks, and every conversation falls silent. No one gives the order, but everyone understands that the sorrow being sung deserves to be heard. The soul of FADO rests in a single word that resists full translation, SUBDUED. It isn't simply longing, it's the ache for someone who has gone away, a place that can never be returned to, or a past known to be gone for good. That feeling has followed the Portuguese for centuries. It once lived on the docks, where families watched loved ones board ships without knowing if they'd ever return. Today, SUBDUED still lingers in villages emptied of young people and in the eyes of parents whose children now work abroad. FADO in Lisbon often tells of working-class life, broken love, and the harshness of the sea. In Coimbra, it's tied to university student traditions, black capes, and songs of love, youth, and parting. In 2011, FADO was recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. But to the Portuguese, it has never been just an art form. It's how they turn sorrow into music and memory, into something that can be passed down through generations. Portugal can shine bright under hundreds of days of sunshine each year, but it's only when you sit in a dim room, listening to a FADO singer's voice rise into the air, that you truly touch the soul of this country. Portugal once turned its face toward the ocean in search of the world. Today, the world turns toward Portugal in search of a slower life, more sunshine, and a sense of peace. But behind the stone-paved streets, the stunning beaches, and the aching sound of FADO lies a country full of paradoxes. A place still relatively affordable for many foreigners, yet growing more expensive for its own people. A nation that once built an empire spanning continents, now watching no small number of its young people leave home in search of a future. And a people who live under nearly 300 days of sunshine a year, yet who created some of the most profoundly sorrowful music in Europe. Perhaps Portugal's real appeal doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from how its people still know how to savor a cup of coffee, cherish a family meal, and turn loss into music, even when life isn't always gentle. We come here for the shocking laws, the captivating beauty, and the promise of an affordable paradise. But as we leave, the question that remains is perhaps this: what would you be willing to trade to let your own life slow down? Even just a little, if you had the choice, would you want to live in Portugal? Leave your answer in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to keep exploring strange lands, lesser-known cultures, and the most authentic stories on this planet with us.